So, those that walked through the tunnel, did you notice it wasn't in a straight line?
Yes.
All the rest now, please notice it isn't in a straight line. This tunnel was done by two groups. One started where we split at the spring. The other started where we are right now. And they were tunneling one towards the other. Just before the end, inside the tunnel, they left an inscription on the wall. The original inscription is today in Istanbul, Turkey. Why is it there? It was discovered in the 19th century, in a period in archaeology that they took everything with them. That's why when you go to the British Museum, you see things from Egypt. And this tells us of two groups tunneling one towards the other, and telling us that when they were very close, they were able to hear the other group calling. And they met pickaxe to pickaxe, face to face. They used no GPS and no computer. So how is this done? The main theory you can find explains that they were tunneling in a natural crack between two different types of stone. And that's why it twists and turns. But unfortunately, we know today that this theory is incorrect. A geologist checked and found that they go into hard stone and into soft stone, into hard stone, soft stone. So he asked himself, why should they bother to go in harder terrain? His theory goes like this: two groups, one beginning at the spring, the other at the pool. Fastest way is a straight line. Why didn't they just work in a straight line? Because they were afraid they might get two lines that never meet. So how do you increase the chances of meeting? Somewhere we will meet. If we have some extra, I don't care. Did you notice there is some extra? There are two spots where you see they started and corrected themselves. It isn't really an extra. It means they were listening to the voices, and sometimes the echoes take you to the wrong direction. And that means that this was tunnel engineering. They thought what they were doing. They planned it ahead. And when they managed to meet these very, very good engineers, or very, very lucky ones, they were very happy to put a sign on the wall saying, "Yay, we did it."
They got to worry about elevations.
You're definitely right. And as I was asked, at the end, the height is really, really high. And there, apparently, these very good engineers made a mistake. The group that started here started 12 feet too high. So they're working, and after quite a while, they apparently start their calculations again, just to be sure, and suddenly notice they are wrong. What do? They lowered it really deep down. Why? Because they didn't want to accidentally be above the other group. They wanted to be a little bit below the other group. So the water will really flow and fill the pool. So where is the pool? See this huge garden? This is the pool. You are sitting on the edge of the pool. And this system will be known as shiloach, because lishloach in Hebrew means to send. In Greek it became siloam, which is just a mess with the word, because in Greek that word means nothing. But the amazing thing is that this word remained here, because the name of the neighborhood across from us, it's mainly an Arab neighborhood, today is named as Silwan, which actually is the Arab version of the same word. They have no meaning in these languages. It actually is a playing around a version of the Hebrew shiloach from the first temple here. So this is the pool the water was sent to. And this would be the location where everyone gets water. But do you remember the historical context? Do you remember the Assyrians are threatening this place? So the Assyrians attack the land of Judah. In Nineveh, northern Iraq today, they found the official Assyrian history. Actually, they had several copies of their history. Apparently, they liked themselves a lot to write it many times. And there they write how Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, attacked Hezekiah the Jew and captured his cities and took gold and silver and closed Hezekiah in his city, just like a bird in a cage. You get the impression who won, right? Well, the cool thing is that if I open the Book of Kings, I find 90% the exact same description, and at the end, we won, the Assyrians went back home. Well, of course in your official history you will never write, I lost. But how do I deal with two historical records that don't say the exact same thing? What? They kind of. But I'll get my best help, and that's the third historical record. In Egypt, an Egyptian king writes how he attacks the Assyrians, wipes them out in Judah. Hezekiah, the king of Judah, called the Egyptians, "Come help me." Why do the Egyptians come help? Because they say it's much better to fight my enemy on someone else's land before they come over. So what the Assyrians really did is they didn't tell you 100% of the story. They told you we attacked. They didn't tell you they lost, because, you don't say that. So when we take all these descriptions together, we find out the following happened. Judah was severely damaged. Egypt helped, and Hezekiah is the only king living in this area in that century, fought the Assyrians and stayed alive to tell us about it. All the rest, if they fought the Assyrians, they weren't alive afterwards. So Judah attacked, it remains semi-independent. Why semi? Because now I owe the Egyptians something. 20 years later, the Assyrians come again and attack Egypt, and now I'm semi-under Assyria. But Judah in some way manages to help itself and keep some way independent underneath these huge mega powers. But a century later, the next mega power comes, and nothing stops them. These are the Babylonians. And when they approach the prophet in Jerusalem is Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu in Hebrew, and he says, we have no chance. He says the city will be destroyed. And what do people do when they hear bad news? They do two things. Or ignore him, or tell him to stop because it's bothering us. Usually we don't like to listen to bad news. So Jeremiah tries everything and nothing works. At the end he finds the most powerful weapon he has. Not to say his prophecy, he writes it down. What's the difference between saying things and writing them down? Simple. They last longer. And might even last enough for me to hold a copy and say, hey, I told you so. And when I say things, the crowd in front of me listens. What do they understand? I hope enough. What do they remember a week later? Part of it. What do they remember a year later? A much smaller part, right? If it's written, you get a copy. You don't lose one detail. And you can even give it to your neighbors, and they'll memorize it and copy it again. It will reach more people and stay authentic. So its power won't fade off. Jeremiah writes his prophecy to try to convince the people this is serious. But he's afraid he might be attacked. So he sends the prophecy written in the hands of a friend to read it for him. And this friend walks outside the gates of the temple and spreads this big piece of paper or parchment and reads it. When Michayu, a child that was in the crowd, heard the words, he was so terrified, he started running down from the temple to the king's palace and into the governmental offices, entering the scribe's office, where he finds his father. His father was a minister in the government. And this child runs down and shouts, Father, the city's going to be destroyed. This is so terrible. We got to do something. And his father says, what happened? Calm down. I just heard these terrible words written by Jeremiah. Oh, it's Jeremiah. It's okay. He'd been talking for years. Just ignore him. It's okay. No, Father, this is serious. It's written. Of course, we're in the office and people are supposed to work. So when this child is screaming, everyone stops working, like every time we bring our children to work. And what happens is the king's scribe says, everyone back to work. I will deal with this. If it's written, it's my job. And he walks up to the gates of the temple, brings Jeremiah's helper with the paper down to the office, and they read it out loud in front of everyone gathering there. When they heard the words, they were frightened, looking at each other and saying, the child was right. We have to take it straight to the king. This is serious. Take it to the king, and what does the king do with it? He throws it all in the fireplace. He burns the prophecy. Right, I told you it lasts, it reaches, unless it's destroyed. In the eyes of Jeremiah, when that paper went up in flames, so did the last chance of Jerusalem. A few years later, the Babylonians approach and close on the city. And when they close on the city, Jeremiah tries to sneak out and leave before it's too late. But he was caught by the ministers and guards at the gates, taken by the last king of Judah, Hezekiah, and thrown in the dungeon. If you think Jeremiah sat there quietly for the next year and a half or so, you're wrong. In the book of Jeremiah, there are 52 chapters. 48 of them are bad news. 4 speak of a new city built on top of the ruins of the one before, of people coming back home to rebuild the city. These were said when he was in prison, when he couldn't save the city. There in prison, he buys a field he cannot see, a field he didn't care if he ever saw. It was a symbol for the city to be built again on top of its ruins. So he takes a piece of parchment and writes the document, and then he ties a string around it to keep it shut. But I don't want you to open it. So what do? I take a piece of clay, stick it on top of the string and knot, and then I stamp it with my seal. He says this is a symbol for the city to be built again on top of its ruins. So please, hide this. He gave it to someone to hide it. Because in the future people will buy fields and build homes and rebuild the city again. The city was destroyed by the Babylonians. The people were taken away to exile. Jeremiah was freed from prison. He died quite shortly after. The city was left in ashes and in ruins. Until 50 years ago, when Cyrus, the Persian king, allows the people in exile to come back home and rebuild a new city on top of the ruins. Please take a look at these stairs you're settling on, you're sitting on. These stairs, right here, look. Look at the stairs leading down towards the garden, which is the pool. These are from the Second Temple period. Which means if they'll take these apart and go a little bit deeper in, what will they find? Finds from the First Temple period. But here they preferred not to continue in the excavation. Why not? It's a shame to take it apart, you won't see it. So they just stopped. And here they found an edge of a huge pool. The pool of Shiloh, renovated in the new period. This was also destroyed. And then a new city built above it. And it was destroyed, a new city built above it. Look at the pile of dirt and rocks and rubble here that actually covered everything. When they went through all these layers of history, they were able to find all these layers and identify them and tell us the story of many of them. And one of them, at the top of the hill, remember those houses I showed you at the top? In 1982, in the ashes and ruins of those houses, they found 51 seal impressions. No documents survived the fire. Just pottery. On one of them, a name. The name was Gemaryahu, the son of Shaphan. Who was he? A minister in the government of Judah, sitting in the scribe's office in the middle of work when his son came over and announced Jeremiah's prophecy. That was the first time ever that a name we know was discovered in the archaeology of Jerusalem. You understand that everyone was totally amazed. Until someone came up and said, please do me a favor. Prove that this Gemaryahu, the son of Shaphan, on this tiny seal impression is the same person mentioned in Jeremiah chapter 36. Maybe it's someone else's same name. Maybe it's his cousin, by the way. It's like opening a phone book of modern Jerusalem district, and you find there are 3 Oren Sapirs. I found out eventually that there are 2 more with the same name like me. Okay, we're not the same person. So in the display in the Israel Museum, when they put this, they put the pile, wrote one of the names mentioned in the book of Jeremiah. Do whatever you want with that piece of information. 25 years pass. 2007. Top of the hill, large stone structure excavations. Unfortunately, only foundations were found, so it's very hard to know. But in between the rubble and ashes rolling around there, they found more than 100 seal impressions. Okay, we're already talking about dozens in a very small space. And the new batch, 2 we know. 2 of the ministers that grabbed Jeremiah at the city gate and threw him in prison. What are the chances these are 3 other people with the same names, living in the same area, in the same city? You'll agree it's a little bit lower chance. The display in the Israel Museum was changed. Gemaryahu, the son of Shaphan, was put separate, labeled as a minister in the government of Judah from 2,600 years ago. But to say the truth, I can't stop the tour right now. 3 years ago. Excavation a little bit above where we started our tour found a city dump, garbage site. So you know, garbage for one man is a prize for another. This seal impression was found there. This, of course, an enlarged picture. This is 1 centimeter. And this seal impression is very important because this time there's no doubt about it. The name here is Hezekiah, king of Judah. There was only one Hezekiah, king of Judah, so it can't be anyone else. So today we have out of hundreds of names, 4 we know. 3 ministers and 1 king. A king that made the underground tunnel, transferring the water of the Gihon spring into listening. What I did with you in the last more than 2.5 hours is talking nonstop. What you did is listening nonstop, so thank you. Walking with me underground and up on top, through the history of an ancient city, going 4,000 and 3,000 years back, getting to the first temple period, getting to the days of the prophet Jeremiah, when this city was burnt and crushed, and the people were taken by the Babylonians away to exile. Can you visualize those people leaving? Can you see them packing their kids and belongings? I can see 3 people I know there. 3 people, their names were found, taking their family and leaving. But 50 years later, I can see their grandchildren coming back home and rebuilding a city on top of this ruins. So I want to thank all of you for walking with me and suffering me talking so much, taking you throughout this tiny hill that is actually the spot where Jerusalem was born.